Not worth the price. A story by user TaintedPills. Something easy is not always simple, as paradoxical as it sounds. Something like what he was about to do was supposed to be simple. Everything becomes simpler when it's done God knows how many times. Just activate the communications hub, enter the right channel, use the right words, and be done with it once and for all. But he couldn't. His trembling hands would not allow him. He should have known it would be this difficult when he woke up and found he couldn't look at himself in the mirror, no matter how hard he tried. These damn hands. He dared to look down at them, seemingly calming them with just his stare, until they started shaking again. He tried to focus on something specific in order to steel his nerves. His eyes fell on the engraved buttons that adorned his suit sleeves. A small reminder of where he stood in the hierarchy of the company he had devoted himself to for more than a decade. Working with the closest thing to the devil had its perks. Material perks, but perks nonetheless. And these buttons were only a small chunk of them. Plenty of riches and plenty of costs. It seemed normal to him up until now. That is, when he started to doubt if the rewards were worth the costs. Somehow, he found the courage in himself to activate the console, hit the correct keys, and activate the comm channel he should have activated almost an hour ago. The four pitch-black eyes that occupied the center of the massive screen threatened to crush his larynx from just the stress alone. The flips his stomach was making almost forcing him into vomiting a third time. Even sputtering out a casual greeting proved too much for him. Fortunately enough, he didn't have to greet the unsuspecting individual first. "May the mountains bless you. Our people are excited to speak to yours again." "So are we." These are the only words his tormented throat could stammer out. He didn't know whether to be grateful or not for their ignorance regarding human body language. His hands shook even harder while holding 2 stacks of legal papers. The question in his mind was which stack to scan. "We are aware of the realities of trading, and we are eager to repay you for the technology you graced us with." His stomach protested once more. If he scanned the stack he was holding in his right hand, they'd repay his employers all right, just not in the way or scope they could ever expect. They'd give everything in their name away. The land their people lived on. The mountains they loved so much would get mined out until they were nothing but empty husks, and if they resisted, they'd get kicked out. They'd become nomads whose home was stolen right under their noses. If he sent them the stack his left hand was holding, then maybe, just maybe, there'd still be hope for them. "Is there something you wanted to tell us?" The sound of his heartbeat was becoming unbearable, and he could not hold off making a choice. The time had come, and he'd have to pick something. Anything. Question was, whether he ought to pick what would help him, or what will let him live with himself. Stand by for further instructions. It didn't matter if he liked it or not. He had already made his choice without necessarily knowing it. The stack of papers in his right hand was thrown across the room, scattering all over the floor, right where they belonged. He quickly scanned the stack he had chosen and sent over the file. He could hear the printing process taking place on the other side of the screen. There'd be no need to read everything out to them. Everything on these papers got translated from one chosen language to another, and vice versa. The representative picked up the papers and went through them in silence. I don't think I understand what the purpose of these documents are." Hidden clauses, internal documents regarding hidden fees, how to squeeze out the most from recently uplifted civilizations, and other details your people ought to be aware of. "Are you saying you have been taking advantage of us this whole time?" "Yes." The words that would get him stripped of his rank, title, and benefits he had worked almost the entirety of his life seemed to fly out of his mouth with particular ease. Your first mistake was accepting my employer's offer, and if I can help it, it will be your first and last mistake." His fingers danced across the keyboard, bringing up the file it automatically created when scanning the documents he placed on the console. He quickly found the section he was looking for and shared it with the screen of the alien's console. This particular section is of great interest to you. It goes into detail about standard procedures when it comes to premature termination of contracts on the client's side. Your people will still hurt greatly for canceling whatever you agreed to, but you will get to keep your lands in your name. He stuffed the very stack of documents that will end his career back into his suit's inner pockets. still stressed, but also filled with something unusual. A sense of satisfaction unlike any he had ever felt. He took one last look at the confused representative. The period of acceptable termination is ending, and it is ending soon. Share everything, and I mean everything you learned right now with the people above you. Goodbye. He turned off the console and walked out of the room, soon breaking into a dead run. He'd catch a ship off planet, and eventually a ship off the star system he was in. He knew for a fact 2 old generations before him worked in the same corp, and they'd curse his name for eternity for throwing everything away. But he couldn't help it. He started his dreadful career by giving a small piece of himself away. Eventually, he gave the entirety of himself away. That is, until they started asking for pieces of his soul. He gave them just as eagerly, until he gave almost all of it away, too. Now they asked for the last piece that mattered, and he refused to give it over. It's not worth the price. Not worth his soul. If you're new here, welcome aboard. Check out the description for the story, and join the Discord if you like. Consider supporting the channel and the author as well. It's a dangerous world out there, but remember to be brave and look up to seek the stars.